At the far edge of a quiet village, hidden behind wide fields of golden wheat, stood a small clay house. Its walls were rough and cracked, its roof sagged under the weight of many seasons of rain and wind. Yet to a little girl named Maryam, it was the only place that truly felt like home. Maryam was only 11, but in her dark, thoughtful eyes lived the weight of years she had not yet lived. Childhood had slipped away from her too soon. She had lost her mother while still very small, and her father, Faraz, had left soon after. Some people whispered he had abandoned them, others claimed he had gone to the city to find work and never found his way back. But Maryam remembered. She remembered sitting on his shoulders when she was very little, his strong hands keeping her safe as he pointed to the night sky. She remembered his laughter, the sound of his deep, gentle voice, and the promise he had made to her once beneath the stars. One day, little star, life will be easier. One day, I will give you everything you deserve. Now the nights were different. She still looked at the stars, but she did it lying on an old cot under the open sky, whispering silent prayers that her father would return. Her days were filled with small tasks that felt heavy for a child. She rose with the sun beside her grandmother, who was old and frail but steady as a mountain. Together they fetched water from the well, carried bundles of sticks for the fire, and prepared what little food they had. Sometimes it was only thin lentil broth, sometimes nothing more than stale bread softened in water. Yet her grandmother always reminded her to be thankful. Gratitude, she would say, made the burden lighter. Maryam listened and nodded. She tried to be strong, but when she was alone she sometimes let herself cry, her small hands trembling as she wiped her eyes. Still, she found quiet joys. She loved the butterflies that fluttered in the sunlight, chasing the wind as if they owned the fields. She loved listening to the call of doves at dusk and tracing strange, beautiful shapes among the stars. These simple moments were like little gifts, keeping her heart alive while she waited for something better, something she did not yet have the words to describe. But hardship soon knocked at their door. One hot afternoon, 3 men came into their yard. Their clothes were neat, their shoes polished, their voices sharp as knives. Maryam shrank behind her grandmother as they spoke. They said Faraz had borrowed money years ago, promising to return it, but he had disappeared. Now, they declared coldly, the debt fell upon his family. Her grandmother tried to explain that they had nothing, that they barely survived day to day, that her son had gone to the city to work. The men did not soften. One of them stepped closer, his words heavy and cruel. If the debt is not paid in 1 month, we will take this house. Do not test our patience. Maryam's heart turned cold. With trembling hands and tears in her eyes, she stepped forward and whispered, please, don't take our home. We will try. We will work. Just don't harm us. For a moment the men seemed uncertain, but then they laughed bitterly and walked away. Before leaving, they repeated their warning, 1 month, not a day more. That night Maryam cried into her grandmother's arms. If father were here, she whispered, he would protect us. Why did he leave us? Her grandmother stroked her hair softly but had no answer. The days that followed were heavy with fear. Maryam thought of the men's words whenever she drew water or sat by the fire. At night she prayed silently, God, if you are listening, please bring father back. Please. One morning she was walking home with a clay pot half full of water when she saw an old traveler by the roadside. His clothes were torn, his face gray with dust, and his lips cracked with thirst. He looked too weak to even lift the bucket beside him. Maryam paused. She looked at the pot in her hands. It was the only water she had drawn for the day. If she gave it away, there would be none left for her grandmother. But she could not walk past. Slowly, she knelt beside him and held out the pot. The man drank deeply, his eyes softening with relief. Then he looked at her and said, his voice weak but full of truth, child, your heart is pure. You gave away what little you had. May God repay you with more than you ever dreamed. Maryam only smiled shyly and went on her way, not knowing that this small act of kindness would echo back to her life in ways she could not imagine. But the month passed quickly. Too quickly. And then the same men returned, their faces harder than before. The time is up, one of them declared. The debt was not paid. The house is ours now. Maryam felt her knees weaken. She stepped in front of her grandmother, tears streaming down her face. Please, please don't take our home. This is all we have. But the men only laughed. One reached for the wooden door. Then came a voice. A voice Maryam had not heard in years, but one she knew instantly, deep inside her heart. Who dares bring my daughter to tears? The men froze. Maryam turned. At the gate stood a tall figure, broad-shouldered, dressed in clean clothes yet carrying exhaustion in his eyes. It was her father. For a moment Maryam could not move. Then, with a cry, she ran and threw herself into his arms. Father, you came back. Faraz lifted her, his arms strong yet trembling. He looked at the men, his voice steady, the debt will be paid. But hear me clearly, no one will ever harm my daughter again. The men muttered, shifted uneasily, and left without another word. That night, as the oil lamp flickered, Faraz told them his story. Years ago, he had left not to abandon them, but to save them. The village had no work, no hope. He had gone to the city, determined to build a life for them. The years had been cruel. He worked as a laborer, carrying bricks until his back ached. He slept on cold floors, went hungry many nights, but he never gave up. Slowly, one small job led to another. He learned, he saved, he endured. Eventually, he began trading goods. What started as a handful of coins grew into a small shop, and the shop into a business. Years passed. In the city, people now called him wealthy, even a millionaire. Yet wealth had not brought him peace. Each night he thought of his daughter, of his mother, of the promise he had whispered under the stars. I worked so I could return to you with dignity, he said, his voice breaking. But every day away from you was like punishment. Forgive me, Maryam. I never stopped loving you. Maryam clung to him, tears falling silently. In that moment no explanation mattered. He was here. That was enough. Within days the debt was cleared. Coins and notes passed from Faraz's hands, and the men who had once threatened them now bowed their heads in shame. The crumbling house was repaired, the roof strengthened, the walls made firm. For the first time in years, the little home felt safe. Medicine was brought for Maryam's grandmother, easing her pain. Books and pencils were given to Maryam, along with clean new clothes. She touched them with awe, but her eyes kept turning back to her father. To her, the greatest gift was not wealth, but his presence, his arms, his voice, the promise that she was no longer alone. One quiet evening they sat beneath the old tree in the yard. The leaves swayed gently, whispering with the cool wind. Stars filled the sky, bright and endless. Maryam looked up and said softly, "Grandmother always said gratitude makes the heart light. Tonight, my heart feels lighter than ever." My prayer was heard. Faraz put his arm around her shoulders. His eyes glistened, but his voice was steady. I left once, my little star. But never again. From now on, you will never face the world without me. The night was calm. The tree seemed to listen. And for the first time in years, Maryam felt that the world was safe again. This story is a reminder that patience is never wasted, that prayers whispered in the still night do reach the heavens. Life may test us, may stretch the distance between those we love, but love, true love, always finds its way back. Maryam's home had been poor, her days heavy, but her heart was full of kindness. And in the end, it was kindness, patience, and hope that brought her father back, not only with wealth, but with love strong enough to heal every wound.